On the phone, we have Pro Football Hall of Famer, former San Francisco 49er, Minnesota Viking. He also played with the Giants and Lions later in his career, Hugh McElhenny. How you doing, Hugh?
I'm doing okay this morning.
You went to Washington for college, but you grew up in L.A. How did you end up at Washington?
They paid me the most money.
How much did you get back then?
I can't really remember. My wife, we just got married March 19th, 1949, and, no, excuse me, 19, God, what is it, 19, yeah, March 1949, and her father wouldn't, my wife's father wouldn't okay the marriage because I didn't have a job. I just got out of high school, junior college. And anyway, I had an outstanding year at Compton JC, and the Huskies, the University of Washington, propositioned me to go up to school. And they made it possible for me to provide for my wife and I and get a college education. So I went to the University of Washington.
Now, you had an offer, I believe, was it Southern Cal, to mow the lawn for about $65 a month or so.
Oh, that's right. I went to SC on an extension. I lasted 2 months, and my job was to water the quad where the Trojan horse is in the center of the quad, and it's flowers, and I had to water that 3 times a day. Well, I did that for 2 months, but I never got my $65, and that's when I quit. And I went to Compton, JC.
Who was the coach?
Pardon?
How surprising was it that Washington came up with a sum that could get you to go up there to Seattle?
Well, I don't know how I got the money, but I got a check. It was never signed by the same person each month. Had a very my first job. I was still I turned 21. And I worked at the racetrack as a ticket taker. And then my last 2 summers, I worked for Rainier Brewery as a public relations, goodwill person to enhance grocery stores and bars and restaurants to use Rainier beer.
So you got paid in college to drink beer?
I beg your pardon?
You got paid in college to drink beer.
Well, that's right. I guess you can put it that way. I sampled the beer. Right.
Somebody has to be in charge of quality control.
Well, there was one. They put me down on First Avenue. One of the first assignments they gave me. And First Avenue in Seattle was, I guess, a low-income type area. And so I'd go in to the bar and introduce myself and say, can I buy you a beer? And why don't you buy everybody a beer? So they'd give me, I think they gave me $100. To buy the beers and to influence people to buy Rainier, to ask for Rainier beer. And I think I made 10 stops along there. I never had a beer myself, but when I was through, I came back back to the office and gave them $100 back. I didn't have to spend $100, but anyway, I ended up keeping the $100 after I gave it back to them. They gave the money back to me. So it kind of went like that, all different ways.
What was it like playing at Washington University back then?
What was it like?
Right. What was Washington football like back then?
Well, they had a new coach, Howie Odell, and I don't know, it was just like going to any other school or any other football program. They treated me very well. It was practices were very difficult. It seemed like our practices were always on muddy fields. It was never on very seldom on a dry field. But it's amazing. I don't remember really playing a rainy day game, the 3 years I played at the University of Washington. The only rainy days I had on a football field was at the University of California and Southern California. So anyway.
Yeah. You had a pretty fair quarterback back with you in Washington. Yes, sir.
John Heinrich.
What was he like?
He was kind of a quiet type guy, a very confident individual. He was, for a young age, he was very intelligent about the game of football. He knew how to handle it, and it certainly proved after he had to go in. Of course, he separated his shoulder my senior year. He separated his shoulder, so he didn't play. And then he goes into, I kind of forget. It's been such a long time. But he was an All-American 1950 and 52. He had a separated shoulder in 51. But he was an All-American in 1950 and 51. He was just a natural. He was a good thinker, never got rattled. He was just a solid type quarterback. But I would prove that as team meeting Christmas Eve, he ended up coaching in the pro ranks for some, 20, 22, 25 years.
When you got drafted, what was going through your mind? Did you think, I want to play professional football, or did you basically want to get on with your life?
I could have gone into pro football back in 1949 after I finished Compton JC that one year. The Los Angeles Rams, Hampton Poole, didn't talk to me, called my dad and wanted to meet my father. So Hamp came to the house, and I was there, and he offered me a contract at that time. Now, I'm still a minor, so that's why he was talking to my father. And they offered me, at that time, $10,000 to play for the Rams. And of course, my dad was very flattered and all that, but he turned me down. He turned Hampool down. He's too young. He can go to school. He's still young. He can go to school, but he wouldn't let me play. So the Rams was the team I always wanted to play for. In high school, I would be a ticket taker at the Los Angeles Coliseums for the Rams, Los Angeles Dons, UCLA SC games, and so I was really attached to the Rams. So I was disappointed.
Yeah. And $10,000 was an awful lot of money back then, too.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much it was, but now I certainly do realize it. Yeah.
How much did the 49ers pay you when you got drafted by them?
$7,000.
So you had to take a pay cut a couple years later.
That's right.
And what was the reason for offering less money to you? Because you were a first-round pick, ninth pick in the draft in 52.
I was the 8th or ninth pick in the first round. I was hoping the Rams would choose me as their first choice, but they ended up getting the bonus choice, and they took Wade, quarterback. I think he was out of Vanderbilt. I think.
Billy Wade.
And so anyway, it's hard to remember how it all came down, but I played in the Hula Bowl in '52. Oh gosh, I can't remember. But anyway, it was before. It was Frankie Albert. We played in the Hula Bowl, and that's when they picked some 15 college players, outstanding college players in the United States, play against a few of the pros, and I had an outstanding game. And Frankie Albert was the quarterback for the Hawaiian team. And I guess he had an influence. He talked the 49ers in drafting me. And that's how I got drafted by the 49ers, was the influence that Frankie Albert had with Vic Morabito.
I'm looking at that 52 draft, the first round. You had Les Richter, the second pick, Hall of Famer, Ollie Matson, third pick, Hall of Famer, and then you were the ninth pick, Hall of Famer, and then Frank Gifford, 111th. So out of the first 11 picks, you had 4 Hall of Famers.
Yeah, yeah, we had some pretty good players. Yeah.
And then round 2, the first pick was Gino Marchetti.
Gino, God, was he a great? Yes, USF. Yeah, he was. USF had a lot of good football players come out that year. Didn't make necessarily all pro, but they sure got. They were placed all over the league. Many of the players.
It didn't take long for you to make an impression in the NFL. I think the first time in a regular season game you get the ball, you go 40 yards for a touchdown. And then also in that game, you sort of made a rookie mistake by fielding a punt so deep in your own territory and return it 96 yards for a touchdown against the Chicago Bears. What was that game like, if you remember?
I know I just came back from the college all-star game in Chicago. Myself and Bob Toniff. Toniff was their 49er second draft choice. And we came back, I think we played the game on Friday night. And anyway, Saturday we came back to San Francisco, and they were playing the Cardinals, I think it was. The 49ers were playing the Cardinals at Candlestick Park. And I don't know, we suited up. They gave us a uniform, suited us up, and we just kind of watched. I was watching the game, and I think it was somewhere around the fourth quarter. Frankie Albert kind of called a timeout, and he came over to Buck Shaw and says, "Put me in." And I was standing there, and Buck says, "He doesn't know the plays." He says, "That's okay. I have a play for him." So I go into the game, and just like old Sandlot football, Frankie got down on his knees in the huddle, and he drew it on what every player should do on this particular play. And it happened to be a 49 pitch, and it went 38, 40 yards for a touchdown. The Chicago Bear game, that was my rookie year. I scored 5 touchdowns in that game, and 3 were called back, 2 were called back. And I broke the cardinal rule. You don't handle a punt within your own 10-yard line. You take the chances of it going in the end zone for a touchback. But I don't know. I just caught it, and it happened to work out to go the distance for 6 points.
What did your coach say when you got back to the sideline?
I don't recall anybody saying anything to me. I do know the end of the game. In the locker room, they gave me the game ball for outstanding play for that day.
Now, was it at that point that Frankie Albert gave you the nickname the King?
That's when they threw me in the locker room after the game. This is back in Chicago. After a game, everybody kind of huddles around, and the coach has a few words to say and so forth. And Frankie has a game ball, and he says, "Hugh, we chose you as player of the game. Joe, you're still the Jet. Hugh, you're now the king of the halfbacks." And that's how he nicknamed me.
And when you say Joe the Jet, you're talking about Joe Perry, another tremendous running back.
Oh boy, was he!
So you guys were both in the backfield. Who was the blocker? Did you block for each other?
I had some. Oh, yeah, we blocked for each other. I think he blocked more for me. I didn't have that many blocking assignments. The only blocking assignment that I really remember having is when would be on pass plays. I was responsible for guys like Gino Marchetti, blocking, protect the passer. I don't remember having many blocking assignments as a running back in high school, college, or as a 49er.
Well, the story is you had
I don't recall any plays where I specifically had to block somebody, block the linebacker or whatever.
You had 9.6 speed in the 100. Guys with that sort of speed generally don't end up having to block a whole lot. How early in your life did you know that you were faster than anybody else on the field?
Well, I don't know if I was a 9.6 sprinter. I was in high school. I held the world's record, 14 seconds flat in the high hurdles, and I think I had the world's record. I can't remember in the low hurdles, 220-yard lows at 21.6, something like that. But I never ran the 100. I anchored our relay, high hurdles, low hurdles, and broad jump. But I can't say I was ever timed at 9.6 in a 100-yard dash.
Did you ever think about competing in the 52 Olympics?
Competing what?
In the Olympics?
Coach never asked me to do that.
Because one of your teammates at Compton was in the Olympics.
One of my teammates?
At Compton, Sim Innes?
Oh, Sim Innes, yes. Yeah, right. Shot javelin. Not the javelin, discus. Yeah, we went to FC, right. But I didn't run track at Compton.
How do they not recruit you when you're that fast to run track?
Well, I think the University of Washington thought that I would participate in track, but I was never a real smart guy. All I could do is to get through school and play football. If I ran track and football, I probably wouldn't have lasted 3 years at the University of Washington.
I read somewhere that you had to take a pay cut when you got signed by the 49ers because you were making more money in college.
Well, I did make more money in college. I did. 3 years I was at school, my wife and I, her working, and I made more than $7,000 a year.
So, but it all turned out pretty nicely, though.
Oh, yeah. It was great, yeah. But, They were checking me every year. The conference would come and, where did I get my car? I had my. There's another story. The Los Angeles Coliseum relays in high school, my senior year, won the high hurdles, low hurdles, broad jump, and I think our team took fourth in the relay. And it was the last meet of the year. And my mom and dad is waiting for me to come out of the Coliseum. And my mom, of course, gives me a big hug and a kiss. And my dad, he just looks at me. He was a small guy. He was only 5'6". He looks up at me and smiled and went to shake my hand. And in his hand was the keys to my mom's car, the Dodge. It was a 1948 Dodge. and so supposedly he gave me the Dodge, but the thing is, they never took it out of my mother's name. And when Peg and I drove up to Seattle to enter school, I was getting parking tickets. But and I never thought much about them, and anyway, I never paid for a parking ticket. My mom was getting them; they were mailing them to my mother, and so they paid my parking tickets for 2 years.
Oh my goodness!
It was probably cheaper than the college tuition.
Yeah, that's true.
You were part of the $1 million backfield. How did that nickname come about?
I have no idea. I was just a player, and they brought John Henry Johnson. He was up in Canada. He was playing for Vancouver or somebody up in Canada, I think in '52, and they brought him down in '53, and so it was Y.A. Tittle, Joe Perry, John Henry Johnson, and myself. I think John Henry only played with us for 2 years, and they traded him to, where did they trade to, Detroit or Baltimore? I forget. They traded him away. So the $1 million backfield was 1953-54. And of course, over the years, we all became Hall of Famers. But the story was, as I understand it, the $1 million backfield was named because the 49ers were for sale in 1952, as I understand. And with Y.A. and Joe and John Henry and myself, we start filling the stands. And so therefore, Vic Morabita decided not to sell, and he kept the club. So I guess the $1 million backfield came about by how they considered us filling the stands. And that means selling tickets and so forth. So that's kind of how it came around, I think.
So it wasn't because you guys were each paid $1 million.
Oh, Christ, no. We didn't make $100,000 between the four of us. We didn't make $50,000 between the four of us.
With all that talent, how did you guys not win a championship?
I hate to say it because there's not many of them alive anymore, but we just never had a good defense. We could score on everybody, but we had trouble keeping people from scoring on us. But, offensively, Jesus, for 12 games, I never carried the ball more than 15 times in a ball game as a 49er. Today, all these records that are being broke, they're carrying the ball 20, 25 times a game. Well, their percentages, the more you carry, the more opportunity you're going to have to, make yards. So the biggest problem, I think, it was Y.A. Tittle. How does he share it? how does he share Joe carrying the ball, me carrying the ball, and John Henry carrying the ball? So must have been a tough job for YA. I don't remember us ever talking about it, but if I was a quarterback, I would be thinking that, God damn, who's productive today? Tough for a quarterback to make decisions with three guys like us in the backfield.
Because I'm looking at your stats here. I mean, like you said, you didn't get that many attempts. You had 112 your second year, and the highest total here was 185, but you never came close to 185 other than 56 when you got to 185.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, and you got a receiver, R.C. Owens, who around 50. You had R.C. Owens come into the league in 57, and he and Tittles were sort of the innovators of the alley-oop pass.
Yeah, that was an accident. Really, that was an accident. YA will tell you this, too. I think it was the first alley-oop, but how it came about, I think it was only maybe good for 20 yards for a touchdown. The ball slipped out of YA's hand and went high in the air, and out jumped Jack Christensen and Yale Larry, I believe, and caught the ball. But that's how it came about. It was a fluke ball that went up in the air and out jumped the other two players. So they wouldn't then start practicing that during the week, so because Oop was he could jump high and had good hands.
When you ended up going to the Giants in '63, you became teammates with Frank Gifford. Did Frank give you a hard time because you guys should have been teammates a lot earlier at USC? Back in those days, Frank and I became very, very, very good friends. Let me see. Okay, before we went into pro football, he was going with the Giants, and I was going with the 49ers. We rented. He and Maxine were married, and we just, gosh sakes, I'm trying to get the numbers together. But anyway, we rented an apartment in the same complex, and Peggy just had a baby. We had Karen. We just had Karen, and 2 weeks later, Maxine had. I think his name is Jeff. And we were in the same complex. And so we became very close. We'd get together for lunch and dinner and potluck and that sort of thing for 3 or 4 months. We'd come in to play the college all-star game. Frank and I roomed together. And then we played in the East-West Shrine game. We roomed together there. And then when I went back to New York, my God, he took me in like I roomed with him during training camp and with the Giants. And we were friends there. He'd come to our house for dinner. We'd go to his house for dinner. And then, of course, when I left New York, we all went different ways, and we more or less lost contact. And the only time we've really seen each other since those days is going back to the enshrinement at the Hall of Fame. And he doesn't make it every year, and I certainly don't either. So, but Frank and I consider him a great friend, and he's always been very kind to me. He's always spoke very well of on my behalf. He's just a great guy, and I knew when I was rooming with him with the Giants, he would be practicing doing things for his radio show,
He had a talk radio show at that time, and let's see, that's back in 1983, I believe it is. So no, Frank and I consider him a good friend.
And the quarterback on that Giant team was another familiar face in Y.A. Tittle.
Y.A. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Y.A. Tittle.
Did that make the transition to the Giants easier for you?
I never thought much about it. I never saw Y.A. too much just during the football season. And with the 49ers, our wives and everything were very close. Went on vacations together, did a lot of things together. But back in New York, Y.A. was so busy. My God, he was so popular. He was so busy. I just didn't see him off, other than on the football field.
I hope you never went out to dinner with Bob Sinclair, because he would have made you eat that raw meat.
Bob, the geek.
The geek.
That's true. He liked his raw meat. There was a couple of times I heard him tell the chef on the road, put the meat on, just put it on, flip it over, just take the chill off it, please.
He said he was eating raw liver, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those offensive linemen, I think they have a couple of screws loose to do that.
Oh, I don't like raw meat, not even hamburger.
What was that 63 championship game like against the Bears?
That was a really disappointing. I can't remember it too much, with the exception that I took the second half kickoff, and I think I got to midfield, and I made a move, and I slipped in the ice, and I think the defensive back was Taylor. He nailed me, but he was the last guy, and if I would have got by him, it would have been 6 points, and that probably would have been the difference in the game. I think we lost, 14-10, something like that.
Right. What was it like?
Go ahead.
What was it like when you left the 49ers to go to an expansion team, the Minnesota Vikings?
I wasn't. A matter of fact, I was very unhappy. But Red Hickey, I can't really say on the air what I think of him. He was the worst coach I was ever around. Like today, they could sue him for harassment. The way he treated some players, it was just terrible. The way he talked to them and so forth. And I was supposedly considered one of his favorites, but we just didn't get along. We didn't get along, and so I was very happy. The only thing I was disappointed, I thought maybe I knew I still had a couple of good years in me if I didn't get hurt, to be with a contending team. But to sell me for $15,000, that was a real insult to me. And that was Red Hickey that did that.
Well, you obviously did have something left, because you made the Pro Bowl in '61 with the Vikings. And
right.
Norm Van Brocklin was your coach. What was he like?
He was a tough coach, but I liked Dutch. We played in some all-star games, and he was a tough coach on everybody, but he was real fair, and he had if he didn't like something you did without your helmet on, he'd come by and flick you in the head with his fingers. And but he was. I really learned more from Dutch going with him in our meetings, scouting for to play, how we're going to play the team coming up and so forth. I learned a heck of a lot more from him, and I understood more. I think for the first time, I really understood what my position was supposed to be on a football field. It seemed like always before, memorize a number, go to the direction, and let your instincts take you wherever you want to go. Well, learning from Dutch and how he taught the game, I felt I learned more. There was more things I could do and to better myself and help the team.
They've compared you to a similar running style to Barry Sanders and Gale Sayers, but I don't know how they compare you to them. You came before them.
Well, you tell me. You're the media. Yes. Well, I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but when I went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Cosell came up and shook my hand. He was at Compton JC, a couple of years before I was, a public information director. And he put his arm around, whispered in my ear, you are now the last of the Great White Hope. What does that tell you?
Well, there aren't too many white running backs. Although with
There's
the Vikings,
there hasn't been any.
With the Vikings, there was a young Tommy Mason who went on to have a fairly decent career. But
okay.
The only other Hall of Famer I remember was Larry Zonka.
Yeah, he wasn't.
But he wasn't
he
fast.
And I didn't run alike. We didn't run alike. His running was a lot different than the way I ran.
Yeah, no, he was more like an elephant.
Yeah, he was the first down type guy.
Yeah. Also on that Viking team was a rookie quarterback named Fran Tarkenton.
Right.
Did you tell that he was going to be somebody special?
No, I really didn't think much of it that way. Yeah, I do remember, and it gets confusing. It was obvious he was a scrambler. He was quick on his feet. He wasn't great on straight ahead speed, but he was a good scrambler. Right. And but as I remember, I know it sticks in my head. Fran, you got to throw a sideline pass further than 30 yards. And Dutchman would have him work out with weights and throwing, developing his arm, just so he could throw the deep ball.
Yeah.
But he was accurate with the short ball, but you got to throw the ball further than 30 yards. I remember that. And certainly, Fran went on and learned how to throw a ball more than 30 yards. He was great.
I would think Van Brocklin probably, even as the coach, had the better arm between him and Tarkenton.
Say that again?
I said I would imagine even when Van Brocklin was the coach, he could throw the ball better than Tarkenton could.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, he was playing for the Eagles in 1960, and he was coaching in 61. So, yeah, he still had his arm.
When Cosell called you the last of the Great White Hopes, what did you say to him?
I don't think I said anything. I was kind of surprised. And but anyway, I took it as a compliment and understood what he was telling me.
What was he like? Did you know him personally or just casually?
Yes. Yeah, he was terrific. I think he had he had a lot of respect for me. That's the way I felt. The way he treated me, the way he talked to me, and the way I'd be invited to things. He chose me. What was a 19th Super Bowl at San Francisco for me to toss the coin, That was him that made that decision. And, of course, I didn't get to toss the coin. I had to tell President Reagan to please toss the coin. And he'd lost. We didn't talk very much about anything when I went to Seattle. And it was hard to try to bring pro football to the city of Seattle. Then he couldn't be close to me. We'd go to various meetings, and he'd look at me, but he wouldn't wave or say anything. He couldn't have any direct contact with me.
What was your Hall of Fame induction like? What was the emotion that went through on that day?
Well, gosh, it was. When I look back at my induction, and now we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. 43 years ago, when I went into the hall, I can't remember how many members. There must have been 50 or 60 Hall of Famers at that time. God, we stayed in a motel. My mom and dad were there, my wife and my daughters. It seems like we were scattered all over the place. It was, I remember it being fun because you had time to greet and see the other players who are in the Hall of Fame and that are going into the Hall of Fame. Today, going back, God almighty, I went back for my 40th anniversary. I hardly knew anybody. They were all mostly passed away. There's maybe 4 or 5 that I would see that I remembered and played against. But when I went in the Hall of Fame, it was very simple. It was very close. And very caring. Today it is. It's a big show. It's a big deal in Canton, and I tell you, the city of Canton, they do a fabulous job of handling all of those celebrities. But I wish I could go back there and experience the first year I went in. And secondly, one thing I disapprove of today is, my God, all these speeches. Everybody thanks their brothers, cousins, Uncle Jack, Bill, and Bob. They go on and on and on. It's obvious that anybody that goes in the Hall of Fame, you cannot recognize properly all the people that contributed to your success. And I kind of get blown away when all these guys get up there and spend a half hour talking about. To me, a lot of it is a bunch of BS. But that's the only thing that frustrates me now. Is when we went in, we thanked our parents, Mom and Dad. Thank you. And say thank you.
Why couldn't Cosell talk to you when you wanted to bring a team to Seattle? Was it the NFL telling them to disassociate with you?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. You don't show favorites. No favorites. It's strictly a business deal. You got the money, you get the money, put up the money. That's the only time Pete Rozelle, I think, talked to potential owners is they're talking about money. Can they afford it?
What number are you when you went in the Hall of Fame? What number's in your gold jacks?
Class of 1970, and then 62's underneath it.
So you're the 62nd person that went in the Hall of Fame.
I guess so. I didn't know that. I wasn't sure.
How did you come to wear number 39?
Norm Stanley had number 32 with the 49ers. He was an original 49er, 1946, 7, 8, 9. And he kept the number. And they just gave me 39. I didn't say anything. That's okay. Didn't bother me. Number's a number.
The only living players who've been in the Hall of Fame longer than you, I'm looking, is Chuck Bednarik and looks like Art Donovan and Charlie Trippi.
Charlie Trippi and Donovan are still alive. And who's the other one?
Chuck Bednarik.
Oh, yeah, Chuck. Yeah, they've been in longer than I have.
Right, they're the only three.
Well, where are the others?
They're in the Golden Gates.
Yeah, that's part of life. 9/11. We were back in Canton. I was back in Canton playing in their annual golf tournament when 9/11 happened. And my God, here Tammy Owens, who, God bless her, does so much for all of us 49ers, and more so, I think, in the earlier days. But her job was to get us home, and everything shut down. Couldn't get an airplane, anything. But she got rented cars. Gail Larry was on a train with down to Dallas. Pete Peebles was in a limousine. They rented a limousine to get him home. They all went home different ways. Dave Wilcox, his wife is very big in travel. She has a travel agency up in Oregon, and got him a car and he drove home. And Tom Max, he lives here in Vegas, and Joe Perry was in Phoenix. And we were the last to leave. And how we got home was Tammy I think he was the Chrysler Plymouth dealer in Canton, Akron, his jet, and they flew us home. That's how we got home. Wow. That was 5 days after 9/11.